whatever it is. What we just know is Nigerians or my parishioners and the Nigerians that are talking on the pages of the newspapers are going through hard times, especially financially and economically. And I felt, hey, let's talk about this. I'm sure somebody out there will be encouraged. Somebody out there will learn something if we could discuss this all-important subject.
Great. Nigeria just came out of a recession last year. And you're also a counselor. You speak to people, both young people and elderly people.
Oh, yeah.
What was the common denominator, as regards to all that they shared with you?
The common denominator about all they shared with me was lesser opportunities. They do not have as much opportunities to make money in their various endeavors like they used to have. They all talked about inflation, how things had become much more expensive in the face of dwindling earnings. So they were earning lesser, and yet things were getting much more expensive, making it just difficult to survive, as it were. And I heard stories like that again and again, and that is what I would say is really the common denominator I have seen. Lesser earnings, either due to loss of jobs or less clientele, as various companies started reprioritizing in the midst of dwindling income, and at the same time, hyperinflation. So it just became difficult for them to manage the situation. Yeah.
Great. You talked about lesser opportunities, and also basically the common man would tell you that things are more expensive in the market, and Nigerians are not earning more. So technically you're still earning the same salary, but buying more expensive things. But last year, I think it was June or July, that Poverty Clock actually rated Nigeria as a poverty capital of the world. How would you explain this to us, Fola?
All right, thank you for the opportunity. I think first thing to clearly state is that the Nigerian economy is still predominantly driven by oil and the fact that we trade with oil, which means that the economy is driven by forex, which means that which is the dollar to be specific, and if you look at the direct impact of falling naira to dollar rates on the economy as a whole, it helps you to directly connect how the cost of commodities will move, just in response or in line with the movements, of this, forex. So our economy is still largely driven. We talk about how we make money. 50% approximately of our revenues are still oil, if much more, even more than 50%. Then we have non-oil sector that's on the average maybe it's about 16%, in terms of contribution, and then we have other streams of revenue. So, point being that we are very much tied to the performance of oil. And so what happened? What would directly or most quickly make us fall into a recession? A dwindling in the cost of our oil in terms of barrels that the cost of a barrel, right?
Okay.
So on the average, we are tracking at about $55 per barrel now, but any drop, in that subjects the nation, directly, just at the speed of the calculation into poverty. So to your question, yes, indeed, we are the call for diversification of the economy has always been, and today more than ever before, we need to constantly be thinking in that direction in terms of the nation.
Great. You work in the non-oil sector. How did the recession affect your sector to start with?
Okay, so yes, non-oil sector in terms of the products, right, or service that the company in which I work in, offers. However, we are all in the oil sector in terms of the costs, right, that we need to bear to power things or other commodities that rely on the oil and all of that. So in terms of being factual, maybe not as much direct impact in terms of the impact of the change of the barrel, price. Okay. But in terms of operating expenses generally climbing up, and everything that's associated to oil climbing up, that of course impacted on the profits of the company as well. But maybe not as much impact as somebody who is directly dealing in trade that has to do, with that the currency exchange.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Fola Onasanya. And back to Rev. People lost jobs last year.
Yep.
Lots of people. The recession affected a whole lot of people. And now here we are saying thriving in difficulty.
Oh, yeah.
How do we align? How do you tell such person to thrive while, not having a job, while not making sales? How?
This is where we now bring God's word into this matter. This is where we realize that we are Christians. We are no ordinary people. And as Christians, we are not religious people like other people are. We are people who have the life of Christ manifesting in and through them on the face of the earth. Paul said in Galatians 2:20, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ who lives in me. And the mentality of a Christian has got to be different in difficult times. A Christian has to think when men are cast down, he will say there is a lifting up. A Christian has to think in famine, in destruction and famine, I am going to laugh. A Christian has to think like James 1:2, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. So challenging times, difficult times are positive times in the life of a Christian. Everything starts from the inside of you and from your mindset and mentality about the times in which you live. So that takes me back to that time, that season that my family went through. Incidentally, it also coincided with me finishing secondary school as a 14-year-old boy and failing school cert. And for me to sit down and retake the papers, my parents didn't have money to send me back to school. I registered for the examination. I couldn't go back and take lectures. I didn't even have textbooks to read. I had some old notes to rely on. I failed again in 1984. As a 15-year-old boy, I was so depressed, I felt like dying. And here was poverty all around me. There was even no money to retake my papers anymore. Things just went from bad to worse to worse. However, I will never ever forget, it was a particular day in 1985. An uncle had this startup business that he just began. And, he had me volunteer to work for him so he could give me some stipends. The stipends never came anyway. He himself was going through a difficult time. And then I saw this book. It was a photocopy, actually, of a book in the drawer of his office table. And the book was by Robert Schuller. And the book was titled, Tough Times Never Last. But tough people do. And as I began to read the book from the preface, suddenly light began to curse through the darkness I was going through. Hope began to revive in me. No matter what you go through in this life, never ever lose hope. Keep hope alive. John Maxwell said, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it.
Yeah.
It's 90% how you react to it. And that's why we are talking about thriving in difficult times. Whether you will thrive or go under the barrel, whether you will just merely survive or you will prosper in the midst of it, depends on your reaction and your attitude to the trying times in which that we are going through. There's no doubt about it. These are trying times, and I believe they can be much further confirmed by the experts that really they are going through, that Nigerians are going through trying times. And you may be watching us from somewhere else in the world, and you're going through your own trying times, no matter what it is. Just realize tough times never last. every challenging time has a lifespan. And so Job said in Job 40:14, all the days of my appointed time will I wait until my change comes. In other words, I'm going to wait it out. This situation is going to pass away. I'm not going to throw in the towel. I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm not going to give up on my dreams. I'm going to hang in there. And I'm going to wait it out, and this season will be over. But I have discovered that we don't have to wait on the times to change when the government probably is able to finally get a handle on the economy for things to get better for us. We, even in the midst of difficulty, can thrive. And by the end of this broadcast, I believe everyone will have found some light one way or the other about how to thrive in this difficult circumstances.
Great. Thank you very much, Rev. I'm sure you have questions for him also. But before we get there, we have people, like you just asked him, we have people who lost jobs. How would you advise them? Or what would you say to them?
Okay, good question. In responding to the question, I'll pick it up from, in reality, right, we see macroeconomic facts or indicators. Things we've talked about, GDP, you know, this is where it is. The growth rate of the economy, this is where it is. The number of jobs, right,
yes,
and unemployment rate, 23%, you know, and climbing. Macroeconomic, right? But we also see, I observe, and a number of economists will also see, that the microeconomic indicators, right, even though there is a direct link from a ballpark impact, but from the individual experiences, as for individual businesses and individual consumers, there is no, the stories can change even from an economic standpoint. Right. And so to your question, to say, yes, we see unemployment rate going up, 23.1% as it is, macroeconomic indicator. I'd like to first to say what exactly is unemployment to that individual, right? So what should be the advice to someone who, unemployment, if we break it down and just say it as an English word, right, is to say I am unable to employ myself into something that will add value to another. And if you follow that definition, you and think about it a little bit, you realize that it's actually not real. In terms of for an individual's interpretation of truly being unemployed, it's really, you can translate it really being to mean not wanting to employ oneself. So, i.e., my point being that to that individual, I would say find ways and opportunities through which you can engage, so that maybe I shift away from the word employ. Engage yourself, and I mean, who are you? Your knowledge that you've acquired, the skills that you've gathered so far. You know, what can you do? The talent that you have, and to translate that in a way that adds value to somebody else. Then you will, you know. So I just like to break it down, you know, in that sense, you know, because when we say self-employment, you know, somebody just says, there you go again, I should employ myself. Okay, but what we're saying is, what can you do, right, to add value, and what do we mean by add value? To solve a problem, you know, to put it simply, you know. So, and I can go on and on to say, you know what, when you think about your skills, you really do not need capital, because the questions around capital and other external resources. When you think about the skills that you have, and now you can translate that in rendering services, right? So you can move yours into services all within your control. Yes, you can move your skills into rendering services all within your control, especially when we think about the individual and the simple things they can begin to do with the skills that are required. And so that's what I would say to someone who has lost a job. If you think you don't have skills that are commercial enough, in terms of skills that you'll be paid for, you might want to, you know, find in the area of your strength already, how you can, you know, fine-tune yourself in terms of skills and render a service.
So basically, don't be idle. The next question is actually for both of you.
Okay.
But I'd rather you answer me first, then you take it from there. Lots of Nigerians are emigrating to Canada. Lots of Nigerians on a weekly basis. It's alarming, actually. I remember yesterday on social media, I saw a couple of pictures. I think the Saudi Arabia government, they're in need of doctors. So they came in. You saw it too. So lots of Nigerian doctors went for that, went for the recruitment yesterday. And in other countries, you go to London, you see Nigerian nurses. You go to America, Nigerian pediatricians and all that. What does this indicate for the Nigerian system eventually, this brain drain, I mean?
Very direct answer. From a governance perspective, and speaking of the responsibility of government, right there, it means that there's a lot of capital flight. It means that there's a lot of human capital flight. Okay, so all forms of value is being shipped out.
Yes.
Okay, out of the country, which makes the country poorer. You should just look at it and say, because then we need to import the products of this raw value that has moved away and is no more domiciled in the country, and then we need to buy it in terms of now having to pay for it. So there's a responsibility for government to, of course, and then that takes us to the budget conversation and around deliberate plans to increase level of infrastructure and make the environment more enabling,
Yes.
and all of that. For the individual, what would I say about that and the flight, migration to Canada? Honestly, I would say take a critical look before you take, just don't join the background wagon effect, and don't, make a careless decision. You probably have opportunities. So we have great opportunities and stories of people who are coming in.
Also.
Yes, foreigners who are coming in, again, macro level, you would say we're not attracting a lot of investors. Micro level, where we see examples, we have people who are coming in to do tomato juice. In foreigner, we have people who are coming in, to explore opportunities in specific areas where they find. So the value is in the detail. The value is in really looking at it. And so my advice to the individual would be to, take a step back, evaluate it. Do you think you have more opportunities, over there? Because, for lack of not wanting to go into the detail, there are the things that you have to also consider when you are there, and how you need to first go down to go up, as against some of the opportunities that you have here. So it's really about slowing down to evaluate and taking a wise.
Great. I really, really appreciate your answer. Pastor Reverend Victor, you must have blessed a lot of people, who'd come to you and say, Rev, I'm traveling. It has happened. I'm leaving, And I know that there are people who are watching us too right now, probably from Canada. Yeah. We have some Nigerians watching us right now who they're also working on it.
Yeah.
So does this concern you in any way?
Well, when I look at it from the perspective of a Nigerian patriot, I'm very, very concerned, particularly about the brain drain. The greatest resource any organization can have and any nation can have is her people. Human resource is the greatest resource of all resources. So for Nigeria to see this brain drain taking place is really, really unproductive for our economy. To see our best brains being shipped out of the country and are carrying their value and going to contribute to the development of nations that are already developed is really quite a very sad tale for our country. When I was a child, I was very familiar with how our country, our government was so committed to human capital development that beyond the fact that they ensured that our schools were very adequately equipped and that the people got qualitative education, they also ensured that the type of education not available in our country, they sponsored people to get abroad. They gave out scholarships for people to go to universities in UK, in US, in Germany, and other parts of the world. And they got this training, but they always enthusiastically came back to contribute to the development of the Nigerian economy. They felt like they owed it to the country, and they had that sense of patriotism to return to the country. But where you see poor leadership and selfish leadership in government, it leads to the populace also deciding to be focused on self. So in Nigeria, it's become everyone for himself. And that's the reason why it's a mass exodus. I can't blame those who are going out. There are times when you need survival, and if The only place you can get your survival is out there. I really don't blame you, but like Fola advised earlier, people should take their time. We've seen people who have jumped out only to rush back into the country, and we've seen those who have gone out and they thrived at it. As a pastor, Genesis 26, I see an Isaac who in the time of famine wanted to go down. He first went down to Gerar, modern day Gaza, and after some time there was famine even in Gaza, and he wanted to go down to Egypt. Then the Lord appeared to Isaac and told him, do not go down to Egypt. Now, it was natural. There's famine here. The crops are not going to grow. There's not going to be money. The Nigerian economy is not where it ought to be. The jobs are not there. And all the economic indices are really portending worse times to come. What makes sense? Get out of the country. That makes sense to Isaac. That makes sense today. However, the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, don't go. So it's important to seek the face of God and not just make decisions. As a believer, I want you to know whether the economy is down or the economy is up, God is still God. The most important thing is for you to be where God wants you to be. You can prosper anywhere. In 1 Samuel 17, we see how, or was this 1 Kings rather, 17, we see how Elijah in the time of famine, which was caused by his own prophetic word anyway, was able to survive the famine by going to a brook called Cherith. The Lord told him, hide yourself by the brook called Cherith. Of course, the king will have killed him if he saw him during the famine. I have commanded a raven to feed you there. And the raven brought food to Elijah every morning and every evening, and he had water to drink from the brook. The interesting thing about the raven is that of all birds,
it's the stingiest.
The raven is the most stingy. When the raven gives birth to its baby, the raven never sits with the baby. The raven flies away, never takes care of the baby like other mothers do. And God used the raven, the most unlikely means, the most unlikely source, to bless Elijah for his survival. God can use anything, use anybody, use any nation to bless you. After some time, the brook dried up. And when the brook dried up, now God says, go to Zarephath. I have commanded a widow. A widow? I thought you would say, I've commanded the king to feed you. I've commanded a widow to feed you there. And it was in another unlikely place that Elijah was able to find his survival. What am I simply saying? Are you saying everybody going to Canada is wrong? Everybody going down to Egypt is wrong? No. In Genesis chapter 12, there was famine. Abraham went down to Egypt. He found his survival in Egypt. So your survival can be Canada, it can be UK, it can be US, but it can very, very well be in Nigeria. And like Fola said, just as people are rushing out of Nigeria, foreigners are rushing in because there are opportunities in this country. And you ought to just pray and ask God for divine direction. Ask for direction in the midst of trying times. Lord, what should I do? Where should I go? Because if we are stuck doing the same thing over and over again, we will remain on the same spot. But whenever your resources dry up, child of God, realize there's a need for a change of direction. Psalm 23 verse 1 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. That means my provision is dependent on following the direction of the shepherd. Now, if I don't have a relationship with God, how will he lead me? He won't be able to lead me. If I don't seek God, how will he lead me? He won't be able to lead me. You know, what I'm simply saying is, not every opportunity is your opportunity. Not every open door is your open door. But there's one certainty, and that is the fact that God has provision for you. When the resources dry up, it's time to move. To where? To wherever God leads you. And that place is even more likely to be Nigeria than anywhere else. But if you are led outside, sure, go outside for your survival. I do hope and pray in the way I'm looking at it that the days are going to come when the Nigerian economy will thrive better. and we will see a massive return of our people back home. So that this thing that the enemy seems to mean for the evil of Nigeria, God will turn it around for our good, where they take the experiences, the skills they've acquired abroad, and they can come back to Nigeria to contribute to our economy. And if you're outside of Nigeria there and the brook has dried up for you, why don't you pray about it? God may want you to come back home. I've seen people who are stuck abroad, and it is when they return to Nigeria that they are able to find themselves thriving again. So seek the face of God for direction. You will thrive again.
Great, thank you very much. And I just wanted to chip this in. I've spoken to a couple of people, a lot of people actually, who say that when they want to leave the country, or when they leave the country, they're not leaving Nigeria because they want to be millionaires in other countries.
Yeah.
It's just because they just want a system where things work.
Yeah.
They just want a system where they don't have power issues, they don't have bad roads, they don't
right.
have to run after, a Mirua or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just about a system that works. And I don't think that's a bad thing, is it?
No, it's certainly not a bad thing. I think it's only human to want to operate in a place where the system works. Interestingly, I guess the system used to work better in this country at the time, but there's been a lot of dilapidation in infrastructure in the last several decades, maybe the last 40 years, and it's partly due to mismanagement of resources, especially at government levels, with the connivance of the citizenry, because we are always pointing at government, and the people out there in government are just a reflection of the larger society. May I beg born-again Christians watching me, we should stop being a part of the Nigerian problem. When you get into positions of influence, and right there you are mismanaging resources, you are destroying this country. Corruption is destroying this country. And with the connivance of the citizenry, because we are the contractors who work with those government officials, and when they inflate the cost of contracts, we enjoy the money, isn't it? And we are just part and parcel of the rot. Let the Christians who get into positions of power and influence be truly salt in the earth, light in the world. Let's make a difference for the sake of upcoming generation. Our children are going to have to live in this Nigeria. Our grandchildren are going to have to live in this Nigeria. Let's get selfless about the way we serve in this nation so we can get this infrastructure back on its feet. Now, nobody is going to come and develop your infrastructure for you. We Nigerians have got to be committed to it, and we have to work at it. That's why we need that new sense of nationalism again in this nation, where we are committed to getting things rebuilt and getting things done so that we can bequeath a better Nigeria to upcoming generations.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, before I go to my next question, in case you have questions for us, you're watching the live stream feed of Reverend Victor Adeyemi of Global Harvest Church. You've got a question or two, feel free to drop your questions. We'll definitely take all your questions. And now over to you, Fola and Onasanya, about education, scholarships and all that, back in the days, not too long ago. And I just want to say one thing. I want to ask you rather, some employers actually complain about the type of graduates that we have. A lot of employers complain and say that our graduates are not employable. You work in the private sector and you've had to deal with these people that they talk about. How true is this, one? And two, how can they be employable? Because we see these young people every day. They are our brothers, they are our cousins, they are our nephews and nieces.
Okay, it's a good question. And I had to reflect a bit because this statistic or common knowledge or saying has been around for a while, say 10 15 years.
Yes.
Our youths are not employable. So short answer will be, in a sense, true, in a sense, untrue. True, and I think the point they try to make many of the times when they say our Nigerian youths are employable, it's in relative terms. It's in comparison to some other, quality of graduates that they have, interfaced with. So in that regard, indeed, they see that some, say, Nigerian who did not school in Nigeria, a lot of returnee, who are applying for the same jobs, and you could clearly see that there are some, hard skills as well as soft skills, where, our Nigerian graduates have not developed. So yes, true. to that, I would say that there's a whole lot of responsibility that the Nigerian youth needs to take up, you know, and take on continuous development, you know, outside of the walls of the classroom and the school. Understand that your skills are your currency, right? In exchange in the job market. Okay, it is the skills and how well you have earned it, you know, how well you have developed and fine-tuned it, which is, again, within your control to large extent, you know, to commit yourself to reading and growing your knowledge, to commit yourself to practicing, you know, a few, you know, hand skills, you know, and other, you know, skills that you can easily, you know, take on skill development efforts on. So in a nutshell, the breach, you know, the gap can be breached, right? That skills gap, you know, that many employers decry, can be breached by the youth. And a stat says that if a Nigerian youth commits, if one Nigerian youth, you know, if you know, decide to focus on a particular skill area for 30 days, let me just, you know, do the quick estimate of that, what that stat says.
Okay.
It says that in over, say, in 30 days, you give an hour to it. After 30 days, you probably are more skilled, you know, than by 10% than the average graduate. So the opportunity, the point being that the opportunity to quickly shine by taking a deliberate effort to up a skill, be above the average, you know, there's a lot of gain that you can quickly have on it. So, so that should be, you know, a motivation to want to make you focus on this particular skill area, on it above the average, and then you see that you become very attractive. So there's a lot of reward for focusing on, you know, personal development, you know, and making efforts on skill development. You will quickly stand out. You know, that is it. So I always like to say, what can you do as an individual? You can say, you know what, I can focus on this over 30 days, 60 days, you know, 90 days. If it's, say, how to communicate properly, you know, use your data to, you know, get on, you know, platforms, read material as well as watch, you know, YouTube, you know, videos and learnings, trainings outside of classroom that can help you on your skills. And in many areas, the Nigerian youth can take on the responsibility and do the work, you know, growing their skills.
If I may even come in there and make my contribution, I do remember, because I'm not a man of much education, and there was a time I just felt, oh, without formal education, I really cannot do very well. I really cannot fare well in life. And then I came across this book in a cousin's room at University of Jos. I'd gone there seeking for admission and I couldn't get. And the book was titled How You Can Get What You Want, something like that. I hope I'm quoting it correctly. But in one of the chapters of the book was this subheading, excuses, something like excuses people give for not succeeding. And the very first one was lack of education. When I was done reading it, I asked God to forgive me for thinking I couldn't prosper because I didn't have much of education. Because truly speaking, the quality of education we have out there today is nothing compared to what it used to be. People would finish primary school in those days and they would come out with very good diction. They'll be able to make very intelligent sentences and they'll be very articulate in their speech and with grammatical construction. These days, people come out with master's degree in universities and they can't even articulate themselves properly. And it's a great concern. But I read this book and it started talking about, it started giving examples of people who prospered and excelled in life without much formal education. And then the book now zeroed in on why. And it talked about the fact that education is not only formal, that education is also informal. Now, if you will ask for my advice, am I saying formal education is not necessarily unimportant? No. By all means, take full advantage of every opportunity you have to get formal education. But never ever limit yourself. Well, I was saying, don't limit yourself to what you learn within the four walls of the university. Personal development is the way to go. Commit yourself to personal growth. He just talked about the fact that 1 hour every day, with 30 days of committing 1 hour to self-development, in 30 days, whatever area of skill you focus on like that for 1 month, you will have developed yourself 10% better than the average person in that area of skill, whatever the area of skill is. I remember a young man like that. He finished school years ago, had a problem with his university course when he went to university. I think the course was not accredited. He had to drop out. But this young man had a musical talent. This young man was a member of the choir. And this young man started learning how to play the keyboard. And I remember when he committed himself to spending 2 hours on the keyboard every day, a particular year. Throughout that year, he was on the keyboard 2 hours every day, honing his skills. The young man became so good. The next time we had an opportunity, we had a vacancy to hire a music director. We asked the outgoing one to recommend one person. He recommended this young man. This young man was good at his job. That one day I had an African-American friend visiting from America who saw the music of our church and was like, I want the music director of the church to come work for me in America. And that's how today he's been there. Praise God. Enjoying his job in the United States of America. He honed his skills. He developed himself. When I read that book, you know what, Nike? I committed myself to reading. Minimum 2 books on a weekly basis. I first concentrated on the fact that I wanted to become a preacher. So I wanted to have spiritual knowledge. I wanted to have the knowledge of somebody who went to a Bible school to get a degree. So I read everything I could lay my hands on, from wonderful faith-building messages of authors like Kenneth E. Hagin, Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, and in my write of others, to getting down into reading theological books on hermeneutics, Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, Christology, church history, and so on and so forth. Immersed myself in all of them. So by the time I started pastoring, it was very natural for me to attract intellectuals to the church. Professors came, commissioners came to church, business moguls came, bankers, and everybody could understand me very, very well. And the day I told them I didn't have a university degree, they all said, no, it is not true. And they laughed me to scorn. And it took a whole lot for me to persuade them that I wasn't one.
You weren't one.
And it's all because I developed myself now, beyond now reading church books. I will now veer off to current affairs, read history, read other religions, veer off into reading medical science. So when I sit down with a doctor, I could do some good have some very intelligent medical discussions. So far they don't use medical jargons though. Medical jargons I'm still not comfortable with. But we need to spend time educating ourselves. But especially, I want to encourage the youth in this direction. Find out areas of opportunity per time. I mean, I'm sure Fola might be able to mention a few of those as an industry expert. The reality is, whenever you see an economy going down or has gone down like the Nigerian economy, it's also a time of opportunity. Let me give you an example. Forex has become a scarce product in Nigeria today. Because of that, the Naira is trading at 360 Naira to a single American dollar. So sad. I still knew when 1 Naira was stronger than the dollar when I was a child. And it was at par with the pounds. So now it's 360 Naira to a dollar. So the CBN is rationing the dollar. It's not available for every product anymore. One of the things they are trying to stop is the importation of rice. So the government is encouraging growing rice locally. And because of that, the government is pumping money into agriculture right now to help Nigeria get into self-sufficiency in food production, because we have the people, we have the land, we have the weather, we have a favorable climate and all of that. And meaning that if you can get the right information, you can access some of these resources that help you go back to the farm. It also means that if the borders are being closed to some of these products, then that means these products are going to have enhanced value locally. The industries cannot import wheat like before. They cannot import barley like before. And so even some of the factories in Nigeria are encouraging, like Dangote Industries, for instance, they are encouraging farmers to grow products, and they are committing to buying products from these farmers. So a lot of millionaires have been made in Nigeria in the last few years. While the economy went down and times became difficult and there was lots of jobs, a lot of millionaires have been made on the farms, for instance.
Great.
Again, things are getting worse economically, but there are new areas of IT that are coming up. Cybersecurity is a skill people can learn. Now businesses are realizing, especially in a volatile economy like Nigeria and a VUCA world like the one we live in today, how important business analysis is before business decisions are made.
Yes.
The business analysis is a new skill out there in the market. Few months of lecture and you can acquire this certification and you can have a new line of job opening up to you. So there are new lines of business, new lines of jobs opening up in the midst of all these things we're talking about. And so some people are thriving who are doing that. Don't just sit down watching the situation as it is. Don't take to begging. No. Acquire new skills. Educate yourself, develop yourself, and thrive in the midst of it all.
Great. Don't go begging. You were going to add something to that.
Yes, just to say that the markets or industries have evolved, right? So how we have defined the kind of education that you need to have and the kind of skill that you need to have historically.
That's right.
Therefore, the kind of industries that you will be able to fit into has radically changed and has been transformed. That whole linear translation of study this and go into this industry, just to allude to what Rev said, it's a reality, i.e. the education or the skill development that you do outside of the classroom is the mainstream now.
Wow.
Is the mainstream. And that is not to say, of course, you shouldn't speak a line and go into school and do your time learning that skill. However, even to be top-notch in the industry, right, ambidexterity, which is deliberately being able to hone skills along various verticals, is what employers are looking for in talent. Okay, in who they've even defined as a talented, individual, the ability to be able to, and so that we're not saying these things, I give an example. Okay, I studied chemical engineering.
Oh wow!
Okay, I studied chemical engineering, and I did a little bit of that because naturally you would think the linear, oil and gas, right, and other production, petrochemicals, right. However, I've found myself over the years, over say in the space of 10 years, I found myself in consulting, business consulting, as though I'm an economist, okay? As though I studied economics in school, okay? I found myself in HR, okay, which is people development, which, I did for quite a while. I'm finding myself now in digital and innovation, which is technology.
That's right.
And this is quite different from chemical engineering. Probably you would have said, if I did computer engineering, then I should be doing digital. So, in the way to move, the way to be able to thrive, right, in today's world is really to embrace, skill development and hone your skills in the areas where you think, you already have a knack for, interest in.
Great. We have questions coming in already. This is for you, Fola Onasanya. This is coming from Musinilolu Waolanrewaju Monaye. Thank you for sending this. To Mr. Fola, some of us are falling victims of working for sole proprietors who want you to give your best and still terminate your employment due to their own mismanagement of funds that leaves them owing salaries for months. What is your take on this, sir?
Fantastic question. I have real experience, my own experience with this kind of scenario. And I would say I have this experience in the sense that I can relate with the way in which you've, asked the question to say you want to take advantage. Simple answer, understand that the gift that you get from an employer, sole proprietor, multinational employer, is the gift of learning. That is a gift, because you always want to think about what you're doing now in relation to the opportunities that you can exchange, whatever it is that you have in the future. So rethink your experience. He's getting you to do a lot of things means that he's giving you opportunity to learn a lot, to work under pressure, to be this person that is as diamond, that has gone under a lot of pressure, and so you are just, on
unrelenting, you know, and shiny. So rethink the way you look at it. Don't be quick. If you think about it from an earning point of view, I just give what I can give to earn what he deserves. But if you think about the opportunity to learn, then you see that you want even to take more opportunities.
That's right.
You know, which you can then cash in on. So I'm being practical here. You can cash in on it quickly. So if you give yourself a strategy, tell yourself, I want to be out of here in the next 6 months. But I'm going to immerse myself in doing all these things so that I can raise my, you know, skill or value level enough to be able to get the best alternative out there. So it changes your objective. It changes your view.
Great. I think I quite agree with you also, because I was once in that situation too. I worked for someplace and they owed me a lot of money. It was running into like 8 months by the time I was heavily pregnant, you know, then. But I realized, I think I quite key into what you said. My best years, you know, on radio, was probably at that time, because I had autonomy on my show, but, you know, I thrived a lot. I learned so much during that period. So I didn't rush myself trying to leave. I had people telling me, oh, leave, what are you still doing there? But I learned a lot.
That's right.
And I also learned not to do that to other people.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, I learned.
I always tell people, I still told someone today, I said, whenever you have opportunity to work with people above you or mentors, learn how to do things. Learn how not to do things. Both of them are valuable.
Yes.
But, you know, like you said, you have the wonderful opportunity of working, especially when you're with a sole proprietor. Because most of the time when you're in a very massive company, you are lost, probably at a low level somewhere where you're given very little responsibility and you are given little thinking. You are given the opportunity to do little thinking and strategizing on your own. You work close to a sole proprietor. This is the person running the business. That gets you really close to how their brain works and gives you the opportunity to stand on your own. When their own business fails due to mismanagement, you can carry the skills you've earned there and you are of greater value in the job market. But how about even approaching one or two possible investors, friends, family members who can believe in you? How about raising some capital yourself and doing that very same business? Because the services will always be needed out there.
Great. We don't have much time, but we're still expecting more questions from you. This is another question for Reverend Victor Adeyemi. How do you know that God wants you to relocate to another country? What is the litmus test, sir?
Well, the litmus test for me are very simple things like, I do not have peace where I am anymore. If I do not have a spectacular guidance, an audible voice like Isaac heard, then I will just discover that I do not have peace and fulfillment in my heart anymore. And that nation keeps coming to me over and over and over again. That is number one test. Number two test, if I am married, is as it is happening to me, it should be happening to my spouse. Because I'm not just the only person right there who is making the decision. The decision affects somebody else also. Number three is, and this is the probably final, most practical test, if I enter into the process of relocation, then if it is God, it will work. If it is God, it will work. I disagree with these people who, in quote, heard from God they should relocate to America 10 years ago, and their lives have been stuck trying to go to America, trying to get visa over and over again. They've not been getting it, and you have wasted the last 10 years not making progress with your life. God didn't speak to you. If he spoke, it's either you got the timing wrong, or somebody else spoke and it was not God that spoke to you. If it is God, it will simply work out for you.
Fantastic. All right, then, we're still expecting more questions from you. This is a live stream feed of Reverend Victor Adeyemi of Global Harvest Church, and we're discussing thriving in difficult times. Yes, thank you once again. I was actually going to ask you to talk to breadwinners.
That's right.
Both men and women in this period, you know, like I spoke about earlier. School fees have increased, salary is still the same. Tomato has increased, salary is still the same. Groceries have increased, but salary is still the same. And people are genuinely complaining. Some even lost their jobs. So to breadwinners specifically, I'd like you to look into the camera and talk to them.
Well, I'm going to talk to the breadwinners, and I hope Fola will have one or two things to say as an industry expert also. But the first thing I want to say is this. Don't make it worse by taking on more liabilities. All of us should acquaint ourselves with basic accounting, the asset column and the liability column. If you discover that the debts are piling up, things are tightening, it calls for adjustment. I remember the moment this exchange, forex exchange thing took place, one of the adjustments our ministry did was to go off TB and Africa immediately and started focusing more on ministry to you through social media. This is one of those things that we've been doing through social media. We postponed that. So you need to cut down your expenditure. If you don't cut down your expenditure, you'll run into troubled waters. Now, the next thing you do is increase earning. Now, while that wasn't something we could do immediately because we are not a business, everybody can find ways to increase earning. How do I increase earning? Extra investment, a new job, promotion opportunities, relocation to cheaper environment where you're on the same job. For instance, if you work in a bank in Nigeria, the same salary they pay to somebody who works in Ilorin or Ibadan is what they pay the guy in Lagos. Now things are getting very tough for your family. How about moving to Ibadan where the rent is cheaper? How about moving to Ilorin where the rent is cheaper? You have the same standard of living, you might even live in a bigger house, and you get greater value for money. So these are the kind of decisions that you make. Make sure you arrest increase in expenditure. Make sure that you reduce that and then find ways to increase income. Maybe it is time for your full-time housewife to also get a job. Maybe it is time for one of you to stop a salaried job and focus on the family business so that there can be increase. Or on your job, there are certain business interests you cannot do simply because you are the one on the job. So how about madam stepping down and doing the business? So you need to just get creative about increasing income and then reducing expenditure. And that will help matters. And if there's a loss of job, like Fola advised earlier, the service is in you. Your gifts, your talents are on the inside of you. It's a temporary measure. You have your car there. Turn it into an Uber car. Use it for Uber services and Taxify. Make money. And in making money, in driving people around, you meet different types of people. You discuss with them. Job opportunities can open up for you. Business opportunities can open up. Uber is working so well. Some people who run it in 6 months are able to buy another car. And you can easily monitor what the other guy is doing with the car. And your income has doubled. And you can go on and on. Various opportunities exist that you can provide personally.
Okay, great. Can you just respond to that in 60 seconds? Because I want to take another question, and we don't have much time anymore.
So 60 seconds, what do you do? I would say grow in terms of what your existing monetary resources are, in terms of find ways to beat inflation, right? Which is don't just keep your money, because if you just keep your money is losing value. So investment opportunities to increase what you currently have. Generate means create new streams, right? Don't focus, like we say, Nigeria is doing just majorly oil. You too, in your own economy, don't just do the job, as the only thing. Diversify and generate new streams of income. And then I would probably also say gatekeep, in terms of grow, generate, and then gatekeep to say protect what you currently have in terms of blocking leakages. So you probably will find that you could do less of some people are doing DSTV and some case of it. You want to be able to say, what exactly do I watch here? And what kind of bouquet? Coming down to some practice.
That's right. You might decide to go TV instead.
Is this thing for kids, for the kids, and should I just do for the cartoons for them because I'm hardly at home anyway.
And watch news.
And you'll be surprised how well you can retain a lot of the money that you already
That's great. Exactly. Oh yes, yes.
Adjustments.
Okay, a question came in, and this is coming from James Larry Success. Kindly share essential skills required for remaining value-driven for employability. Can we take this in like 1 minute maximum?
Essential skills. Okay, so I'll refer
for remaining value-driven for employability.
That's right. So it's a very interesting question. So quick response is to say soft skills generally are being said to have more prominence even than some hard skills. The point being the emphasis that soft skills are important. So what do we mean? Communication, right? Both written communication and verbal communication. and interpersonal relations, presentation skills, you could keep going in that direction. But another skill you might want to take on quickly, so we had computer skills, right? And computer skills have evolved even to digital skills today. So the application of digital skills is the new definition of literacy. So whether it's whatever area that you want to, there is a digital tool that helps you to be more effective in that area. So understand that if you take on digital skills in your area, okay? So this could be learning how to use an app, that is focused for your area of business and things like that. They stand you out. And you are able to remain valuable to your employer. You use Microsoft Excel, all of a sudden you raise your ability to use it, or you find another app that can do it faster. All of a sudden you are the star in your workplace. That's how to use skill and the value and remain attractive. So soft skills, communication, interpersonal, and all those skills, as well as digital skills, are the two I highlight.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. We've got lots of, I still have lots of questions, but I think we have to do this some other time.
Yeah, I think we need to do a part 2 of this.
Of this.
Because there's still so much inside me I want to say, and I'm sure there's so much